Policy Finance Committee will come to order. Today, members, as you know, members and whoever is listening, we are going to walk through the K-12 Omnibus bill. We start with our amazing staff. They're going to walk through the different pieces of the bill, and then we're going to go to a list of testifiers. And as always, there are a long list of testifiers. So with that, members, we will allow 2 minutes. I think you were all advised 2 minutes for testimony, and we will keep track of that. Just had to be fair to get everybody in. Our goal is to be done by 10. So welcome, good morning. And so our mission from the beginning has been simple and clear with this committee. And I think the committee process has worked fairly well. We've had our moments, but we have managed to get through some difficult times fairly effectively and professionally, the way would be expected. Our mission has been kids first, second, third, always first and last, always. As simple as a kind of an idea we came up with: student-focused, innovative, mandate-free, parent involvement, literacy-driven, and efficient. Certainly everybody has a different version of that. That is what we tried to focus and keep our attention on during the whole process. Last year, in the last 12 months, last year at this time, we were in a bit of a tough spot, tougher than we are now. But during the last year, the federal government, through 3 different relief packages, has pumped $2.6 billion into the Minnesota K-12 educational system, public education system. That is about, give or take, 25% of the current single year budget. The money, as you all know, was spent in various ways. Some of it was by federal law and allocated as such. Other dollars, they had freedom to do what they wanted with those dollars. The governor had some money to share as well. Nonetheless, our state general fund budget has remained tight and is not, the coffers have not been refilled like we might have hoped, excuse me, before the COVID shutdowns in the last year. So we have, nonetheless, this committee has stayed focused on those, on that idea of simple and on our priorities. The priorities being kids back in school, all kids, all schools, all time. Literacy, mental health, addressing teachers of color issue, fair funding for our schools in many different areas, and empowering parents and, yes, educators as well. And that is what we have done in this bill. That is where our focus is, and you will see it clearly that we are taking on those issues, long-standing issues, in a variety of ways, some with a policy and some with money. But I believe we are able to put together a package that, well, some may disagree with, keeps kids and families front and center, helps to give educators what they need, and flexibility to those districts, making sure parents are involved. So with that, members, I will turn it over to our smart, amazing staff. And I believe, I don't know, on the list here is Jenna going first, if that is correct. If not, do as you need to do, Ms. Hofer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You were correct. I will be starting us off. First on the agenda would be going through the change item spreadsheet. So members, in your packets, this would be the 2-page spreadsheet. In the upper left-hand corner, it's labeled Net Appropriation Changes from the February 2021 Forecast Base. In the right-hand corner, it's dated April 5th, 2021 at 8:14 a.m. So beginning at the top of the spreadsheet, you can see that the targets are listed for each of the bienniums. For the 22-23 biennium, the target was $152,100,000. The chair proposes $152,097,000 of new spending, which is $3,000 under the target. For the 24-25 biennium, the target was $146,800,000, and the chair proposes $146,772,000, which is $28,000 under the target for the 24-25 biennium. We'll begin with the appropriations in the bill that are a change from the February forecast base. On line 1 is the transportation sparsity revenue adjustment. This would be an increase of $15,318,000 for the 22-23 biennium. And for the 24-25 biennium, it's an increase of $21,740,000. On line 2, there's an increase to referendum equalization aid, which is an increase of $23,677,000 for the 22-23 biennium, and an increase of $46,362,000 for the 24-25 biennium. On line 3 provides extended time revenue for students who are in residential treatment facilities in summer programs. For the 22-23 biennium, this is an increase of $1,961,000. And for the 24-25 biennium, this is an increase of $2,064,000. On line 4, the chair proposes providing shared time aid for students in extended day CTE programs. So for the 22-23 biennium, this is an increase of $382,000. And for the 24-25 biennium, this is an increase of $756,000. On line 5 is a proposal to provide non-public pupil aid for elementary non-public students and elementary and secondary tribal contract students for guidance and counseling services. For the 22-23 biennium, this is an increase of $3,452,000. And for the 24-25 biennium, this is an increase of $4,032,000. Line 6 is a proposal to provide an additional CTE course for 10th grade students who are participating in PSEO. So for the 22-23 biennium, this is an increase of $280,000. And for the 24-25 biennium, this is an increase of $296,000. Line 7 is a proposal for Minnesota Classroom Support Aid. This would be a one-time appropriation of $60 million in fiscal year 2022. This would provide $400,000 to each of the 4 intermediate school districts and $400,000 to the Minnesota State Academies, with the remaining $58 million divided between school districts and charter schools on a per pupil basis. And Ms. Jelseth will explain this more as we go through the district runs at the very end of the presentation. Line 8 is a grant for the online access to music education. For the 22-23 biennium, this is $300,000, and there is not an appropriation in the tails. Line 9 is a grant to the Sana Foundation. This is a grant in the 22-23 biennium only for $2 million. On line 10 is a grant for the Digital Wellbeing Program. This would be a one-time grant of $1.5 million in fiscal year 2022 only. Line 11 is an increase to the Rural CTE Consortium grants of $2 million per year, or $4 million per biennium. On line 12 is a proposal for education savings accounts. For the 22-23 biennium, this would be an increase of $11,505,000. And for the 24-25 biennium, this would be a net increase of $2,369,000. On line 13, there's a reduction to the college entrance exam reimbursement to right size the appropriation. So it'd be a reduction of $500,000 per year, or $1 million per biennium. Line 14 is a reduction to the statewide testing and reporting system for the 22-23 biennium only of $1.2 million per year, or $2.4 million for the biennium. On line 15 is a grant to letters. This would be $3 million per year, or $6 million for the bienniums. On line 16 is an increase to the Grow Your Own grant programs. This would be an increase of $2.5 million per year, or $5 million per biennium. Line 17 is a new grant for Come Teach in Minnesota hiring bonuses. This would be $350,000 per year, or $700,000 per biennium. Line 18 is an increase to the mentoring, induction, and retention incentive grants. This would be an increase of $2,508,000 for the 22-23 biennium, and $2,516,000 for the 24-25 biennium. Line 19 would be a grant to Pelsby for the teacher recruitment marketing campaign. So it'd be $500,000 per year or $1 million per biennium. Line 20 is a grant to Black Men Teach Twin Cities. So it'd be a one-time grant of $750,000 in fiscal year 2022 only. Line 21 would be funding to the Department of Education to develop clinical nursing services guidance. So it'd be a one-time appropriation of $100,000 in fiscal year 2022 only. Line 22 is Safe Schools aid. So this would be a layer of aid on top of the existing Safe Schools levy. For the 22-23 biennium, this is an increase of $16,424,000. And for the 24-25 biennium, this would be an increase of $37,720,000. Line 23 would be a grant for suicide prevention teacher training. So it'd be a one-time grant of $265,000 in fiscal year 2022 only. On line 24 would be an increase to the regional library's basic system support. So it'd be an increase of $3,040,000 in the 22-23 biennium and $3,200,000 in the 24-25 biennium. Line 25 is an increase to community education aid. For the 22-23 biennium, it's an increase of $2,888,000. And for the 24-25 biennium, it's an increase of $25,276,000. Line 26 would be some administrative costs that go along with suspending academic standards review. So for the fiscal year 2022, it would be a reduction of $40,000 to MDE's budget. And then because of the delay, that $40,000 would be reappropriated in fiscal year 2024. That completes the first page. So we'll turn to the second page. Line 27 would be administrative costs to the Department of Education. So this would be for the Education Innovation Zone program, IT costs. So it'd be one-time $13,000 in fiscal year 2022. Line 28 is a proposal to close the Perpich Center for Arts Education. For 22-23, this would be a savings of $2,311,000. And in the 24-25 biennium, it would be a savings of $10,051,000. On line 29 would be a reduction to the Department of Education for their fiscal year 2021 administrative holdback. In fiscal year 2021, this is a reduction of $1,252,000. On line 30 would be an adjustment to MDE's litigation fees. This would be a reduction in fiscal year 2021 of $2 million, and that money would be reappropriated in fiscal year 2022. On line 31 is an adjustment to MDE's agency operating funds. So this would be a reduction in the 22-23 biennium of $2,171,000. And in the 24-25 biennium, it's a reduction of $2,174,000. On line 32 is an adjustment to the budget for tax credit interactions. This would be for the long-term facilities maintenance proposal, referendum equalization, and safe schools proposal. In the 22-23 biennium, tax credits would be reduced by $1,522,000. And in the 24-25 biennium, they'd be reduced by $2,544,000. That gets us to the total appropriations on line 34. In fiscal year 2021, it's a reduction of $3,252,000. For the 22-23 biennium, it's an increase of $155,619,000. And in the 24-25 biennium, it's an increase of $147,302,000. There are also some adjustments on the revenue side of the spreadsheet. On line 37 would be an extension of the teacher licensure renewal for 6 months. So this would reduce revenue in fiscal year 2021 by $171,000. And then because of that 6-month delay, you'd see an increase in fiscal year 2022 of $171,000. On line 38, I do apologize, there's a typo. It should not say MDE there. Part of the fiscal year 2021 carry forward that we have to track is for the Department of Education, but not all of it. So on line 38 on fiscal year 2022, you'll see a revenue increase of $3,081,000. And this comes from the cancellations that you see on line 34 of $3,252,000 combined with a revenue reduction of $171,000 for the teacher licensure on line 37. Line 39, there are additional property tax income interactions for referendum and safe schools proposals. For the 22-23 biennium, so it'd be $270,000, and for the 24-25 biennium, it would be $530,000. So on line 42, you can see the net total of appropriations and revenue for fiscal year 2021 is a reduction of $3,081,000 for fiscal year 2021. For the 22-23 biennium, there's an increase of $152,097,000. For the 24-25 biennium, there's an increase of $146,772,000. There are also some levy changes in the proposed amendment. On line 45, there would be a reduction to the referendum levy as a result of the referendum equalization proposal. For the 22-23 biennium, so it'd be a levy reduction of $24,798,000. And for the 24-25 biennium, it would be a levy reduction of $43,213,000. Line 46, the education savings accounts, due to the reduction in public school pupils, there would be a reduction in some of the levies for the 24-25 biennium of $46,144,000. Line 47 is an adjustment to the Safe Schools levy. So it'd be an increase in levy authority of $6,499,000 for the 22-23 biennium, and an increase of $13,522,000 for the 24-25 biennium. Line 48 would allow joint powers school districts to levy for their long-term facilities maintenance costs. In the 22-23 biennium, this would be a levy increase of $390,000. And in the 24-25 biennium, it's a levy increase of $780,000. Line 49 would allow joint powers districts and cooperative units some lease levy authority. For the 22-23 biennium, so it'd be an increase of $1 million in levy authority. And for the 24-25 biennium, it would be an increase of $2 million in levy authority. Line 50 would be an increase to the community education levy. In the 22-23 biennium, it's a levy increase of $3,034,000. And in the 24-25 biennium, it's a levy increase of $6,255,000. Line 51, there are some levy costs associated with closing Perpich as a result of the students transferring into public school districts. As a result, for the 22-23 biennium, be a levy increase of $317,000, and for the 24-25 biennium, a levy increase of $688,000. As a result, total levy adjustments on line 53 for the 22-23 biennium are $13,558,000 in levy reductions. And for the 24-25 biennium, it'd be $66,112,000 in levy adjustments. With that, that completes the change item spreadsheet. I'd be happy to take some questions now. Otherwise, we can move on to going through the bill language.
Yep, just go ahead and proceed, Ms. Alford. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and so at this time, members, we will turn to the document labeled in the upper right-hand corner, SCS 0960A1. So it'd be the chair's proposed delete all amendment to Senate File 960. So Article 1, it begins on page 1. On line 1.5, Section 1 was originally Senator Clausen bill, Senate File 190. So what this would do is it would remove the requirement that area learning centers be a cooperation of at least 2 districts, and it would encourage but not require districts to have at least 2 districts for an area learning center. Page 1, line 23 is Section 2, and this actually goes with Section 3 and Section 4, so this would take us all the way to page 3, line 3. This was originally from a Senator Eichhorn bill, Senate File 925. This would provide elementary non-public students and elementary and secondary tribal contract students with non-public pupil aid for guidance and counseling services. On page 3, line 4 is section 5. This was originally from a Senator Rosen bill, Senate File 789. So this modifies the definition of shared time pupil to include those students who attend public school career and technical education programs that are offered outside of the regular school day for secondary credit. Page 3, line 12 is section 6. This was originally from a Senator Chamberlain bill, Senate File 782. This would allow students who are participating in summer courses at a children's residential facility to generate extended time revenue. It also provides a definition for children's residential facility. On page 4, line 11 is section 7. This was originally a Senator Housley bill, Senate File 408. This is a pupil transportation adjustment increase for the Transportation Sparsity Revenue Program. This would increase the pupil transportation adjustment from 18.2% to 70% of a district's unreimbursed transportation costs for the prior year. Page 4, line 28 is section 8. And this actually goes along with section 9, which starts on page 6, line 9. Both of these are governor's budget proposals, and these have to do with revenue reporting for basic skills revenue. So section 8 would clarify the types of basic skill revenue that needs to be reported by updating terminology and removing obsolete references. And section 9, which begins on page 6, line 9, just conforms with current UFARs, which is the Uniform Financial Reporting Standards, that districts report their basic skills revenue by functional area. Page 6, line 17 is section 10. This is originally from a Senator Chamberlain bill, Senate File 626. What this does is this increases the referendum equalization aid. So for districts that are relatively property poor per pupil, they would receive an increase in the amount of state aid that they get for their levy, and their levy would go down as a result. Page 7, line 4 is section 11. This was originally a governor's budget proposal, and this actually pairs with section 12 on the next page that starts on page 8, line 23. So these two sections actually correct clarification errors that were made a year or two ago when the excess tax increment financing statutes were updated. This corrects the years on those. So that gets us all the way to page 10, line 4, which is section 13, appropriations. And we went through those on the tracking spreadsheets. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Lewis, who will take us through Article 2.
Hello. So Article 2 starts at the top of page 13. Section 1 is the absence from school for religious observance that came from Senate File 966, and that allows for or requires the school board to provide notice of their policy relating to absence for religious observance. Section 2 is a combination of that bill as well as Senate File 1441, which was by Chair Chamberlain. And it's a combination of allowing for school calendars with religious observance and the changes to the flexible learning year program, where now a school board could approve their program versus having to have the commissioner approve their plan. And because there are no schools that have a flexible learning year program that allows for a pre-Labor Day start, that language was stricken. In the previous bill, it allowed for a district with a current plan to continue on with the current plan of starting before Labor Day. Section 3 at the bottom of page 13 and on, along with section 4, is from the Senate File 1441, and that allows for a limited number of hours of instruction provided through a distance learning program or plan, which before it also changed the name of e-learning days to distance learning days. So it allows for that, and it actually expands the definition of hours of instruction, and that expansion is on page 14 and allows for all learning opportunities that support a student to be considered hours of instruction versus classroom time, seat time. Section 5 is at the middle of page 15. That is from Senate File 221, Senator Howe, and it allows for patriotic societies to be included in certain school programs and be able to present to the students during the school day. Section 6, reviews and revision required, is an extension of the time for the review and revision of the physical education standards that came from the agency's bill. And then section 7, which gets us to page 17, is from Senator Coleman's bill, Senate File 1537, which was World's Best Workforce Performance Measures. And that section 7 provides a definition for on track for graduation. And then section 8 is including that those students in that World's Best Workforce report. Sections 9 and 10 were an amendment to Senator Corrin's Senate File 1554. And those two sections relate to grants for increasing STEM classes for students of low income and how to use those grant funds. Then section 11 gets us to page 20 towards the bottom. That came from Senator Rood, Senate File 96, and it is about participation in Minnesota State High School League sports, that men or someone whose sex is male is not permitted to be on a women's team. Section 12 and 13 came from Senate File 1048, which was Senator Torres Ray. The section 12 is about dismissal of students that are in grades kindergarten through grade 3, and that is not permitted unless it's the child proposes a safety threat to others or themselves. Section 13 is about the district's discipline policy, and that they have to have an annual stakeholder review and provide a process for someone to request a review of an imposed suspension. Section 14 came from Senate File 702, which was Chair Chamberlain's bill, and that strikes balanced instruction from the definition of comprehensive scientifically based reading instruction. Section 15 is on the middle of page 23, is from Senate File 1942, Senator Duckworth, and that is about providing transportation to non-public students and agreements with the school districts that provide the transportation. Sections 16 through 21 are starting on page 24 are from Senate File 939. It's Senator Nelson's bill. It's several provisions related to PSEO, and they're the same as they were in the bill when it was before the committee. I'll point out one change that is on page 26. There was some concern about districts having to have the policy for weighted grade point averages for PSEO classes versus concurrent enrollment. And the language on 26.32, making sure that the credits earned are equivalent for comparable courses. So then that would get us to page 28. Line 28.21 is section 22 that came from Chair Chamberlain's Senate File 1441. That is, and that's sections 22 through 27 are from that bill. 22 is about allowing districts to offer a full distance learning option to their students. And then 23 to 27 are the changes to the flexible learning year program, where a school board could approve their own program and no longer needing to go to the commissioner for approval. On page 30 is section 28 That came from Senator Weber's Senate File 1471. That is the Rural Career and Technical Education Consortium grant. Then on page 32 is Senate File 379 from Senator Draheim, and that is for school districts that are approved charter school authorizers. When they're going through their review process, they can submit an updated written promise for items that they were allowed to provide a written promise when they got approved. But page 33, the top, is section 30. That came from Senator Duckworth's Senate File 1381, and that pertains to charter school authorizer corrective action requirements. Section 31 is another change that came from the chair's Senate File 1441, and that includes students that are doing distance learning and are on distance learning days into the average daily membership. Section 32, which is at the bottom of page 34, is from Senator Dornick's Senate File 987. That provides for evidence-based education grants when the legislature provides a grant to an organization. 35 on page 35, section 33 is another section from Senator Chamberlain's Senate File 1441. This is an update to the Education Innovation Zone program, and that takes us several pages to page 40. Then that gets us at 40.15, section 34 is from Senator Chamberlain's Senate File 438, and that suspends the academic standards review. Section 35 is from Senate File 1012, and that is the digital wellbeing grant. Page 42, section 36 is the education savings account for students. And that is a number of pages that will then take us to page 47 at the bottom. 47.26 is the appropriations, which has been covered already by Ms. Hofer. And then to the end of the article, if I get there, here we go, page 56. I'll point out things in the reviser's instruction, which is section 38. The big piece is paragraph B, and that is a recodification of the assessments language. Right now, it's all contained in one section, and it's kind of cumbersome. And my House counterpart and the agency got together to figure out a better layout and make them a bit more readable, but there's no changes to the language. It's just really moving them around within the statute book. And then at the end of Article 2 is page 57, section 39 is a repealer, and that is from Senate File 1441 and the flexible learning year with requirements for the that were for the commissioner's approval. And that's the end of Article 2. And I'm still doing Article 3. So
I must add, Ms. Lewis, thank you for going through the work of recodifying. Somebody got to do it. Thank you. Yeah. All right, please continue. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. And then Article 3 is the teachers article. Sections 1, 2, and 3 are from Senate File 1447, and that it was about teacher and classroom safety. And section 4 is on page 60. It's 60.9 is from Senate File 781. That is Senator Coleman's bill. The first section is the definition of what it is to have a professional license, which is all 4 tiers are teacher licenses. Section 5 is from Senator Clausen, Senate File 522, and that is about teacher preparation programs and agreements with out-of-state program providers. It's about programs that aren't existing in Minnesota for licensure areas that we have in Minnesota, but we don't have programs. So the PELSB is to work with and provide information about programs in other states that have those prep programs. Then Section 6 is another bill or another part of the chair's teacher and classroom safety bill. And then let me make sure. Wait, that might be wrong. Oh, yes, that is about hiring a tier 1 license. That actually might have been from, I think, Senator Coleman's bill, actually, and not having to have posted the position and being unable to hire a tier 3 or 4, two, 3 or 4 license for hiring a tier 1 teacher. Section 7 is on page 61. It's from Senator Coleman's Senate File 781. And that is for renewal of tier 1 licenses. And then Section 8, 9, 10, and 11 are from that same Senate file and relate to hiring and dismissing teachers as based on seniority, as well as negotiated unrequested leave of absence. And a lot of the stuff is repeated because we have 2 separate sections for school districts located in a city of the first class, and then all other school districts. So the same language is there for both, just obviously in their respective sections. Then Section 12, which gets us toward line 63.20, is from Senate File 446 from Senator Abler, and that's the Come Teach in Minnesota hiring bonuses. Then Section 13, the bottom of page 64, is about uses of staff development revenue. That was from Senator Chamberlain's bill, and allowing that for teacher mentorship programs. Section 14 is from Senator Coleman 781, and allowing for the CUGMEC, the Collaborative Urban Greater Minnesota Educators Program, and what licenses would qualify, and allowing the grants to go to alternative teacher preparation programs in Minnesota. Section 15 relates to the same grants, but it came from Senate File 446, Senator Abler's bill, about what kind of criteria the PELSB uses in awarding the grants. Section 16 is on page 66, line 21. That came from Senator Chamberlain's bill, and that's the teacher mentoring program where it was encouraged to, but now is a requirement to have a program. And then Section 17, which is towards the bottom of section of page 68, came from Senator Eichhorn, Senate File 1108, and that is the concurrent enrollment teacher partnership. And that takes us to page 72. Section 20 came from Senator Dornick's Senate File 819, and that is the short call substitute teacher pilot program. Section 21 at 72.17 is the beginning of the appropriations. There's 2 appropriation sections in this one, one for Department of Education, then another one for, sorry, this is just make sure, yep. Oh, my pages, I missed stuff, sorry. Well, that was 72, but I missed something on 71. It's another piece of Senator Chamberlain's teacher and classroom safety bill. And then at the bottom of 71 is Section 19, which is from Senate File 1444, and that is the delay of 6 months for renewal of teacher licenses. And then Section 22 is the other appropriation section, which is on page 75, and that's the PELSB appropriations. And then at the end of section or end of Article 3, page 77 is the revisor instruction, which is a recodification, or not recodification, but a codification of the ag educator program. That's the end of Article 3 now. And Ms. Joseph is doing Article 4.
Good morning. Thank you, Ms. Lewis. So Article 4 on page 77, line 4 is special education. This includes Senate File 859, Senator Hoffman's bill. Section 1 modifies school health services to allow for the use of private clinical nursing authorization. Section 2 provides special education services recovery and support due to COVID-19. Section 3 directs the Commissioner of Education and Health to consult with stakeholders on behavioral health services reimbursement. And then Section 4 appropriates money for special education and various other special education programs. So then if you turn to page 82, line 18, Article 5 is health and safety. Section 1 is a Senator Lang bill, Senate File 654, which requires school seizure training and an action plan. Section 2 is a Senator Uyghur bill, Senate File 67, which requires notifications of environmental hazards in school buildings. Section 3 is a Senator Chamberlain bill, starting on page 84, line 2. It modifies and appropriates money for the Safe Schools Revenue Program. This includes adding more aid in fiscal year 22, and then adding both aid and an equalized levy starting in fiscal year 23. In addition to school districts and intermediates receiving additional revenue, charter schools, cooperative units, non-public schools, and American Indian Tribal Contract or grant schools will qualify for safe school revenue. And then Section 4 on page 82, line 24 is a Senator Coleman bill, and it appropriates money for safe schools aid and suicide prevention training for teachers. And next, Ms. Hofer will go over Article 6.
Thank you, Ms. Jelseth. So Article 6 begins on page 88, line 16. This is the Facilities, Fund Transfers, and Accounting article. So on page 88, line 18 is Section 1. This was originally from Senator Draheim, Senate File 380. Section 1 requires that school districts report on their websites certain consulting fees from Code 305 and include a notice that more information is available upon request. Page 88, line 26 is Section 2. This was originally from a Senator Dames bill, Senate File 389, as is Section 3, which is over on page 89, line 12. Section 2, though, allows joint powers districts to generate long-term facilities maintenance revenue. It also modifies the uses of long-term facilities maintenance revenue for joint powers and co-op districts, and it would allow them to use long-term facilities maintenance for leased facilities and any costs related to those LTFM projects. It also would allow the districts to specify which member districts will be sharing project costs for pay-as-you-go LTFM, and it would require that any bonded LTFM projects be the shared cost of all member districts for joint powers and co-op units. Section 3 was from that same Senator Dames bill. The changes are actually at the bottom of page 90. And so this would allow cooperative units and joint powers districts to generate lease levy authority to help pay for the cost of leased facilities. And then on page 91, it allows that lease levy to help pay for the district's proportionate share of deferred maintenance expenditures on the leased facility from the district. Page 91, line 26 is Section 4. This was originally from a Senator Duckworth bill, Senate File 710. So the change is actually on page 92. So what this would do is it would modify last session law to allow districts to redirect any reserved or restricted revenue for another purpose as long as the school board approves and the revenue hasn't already been encumbered for staff salary and benefits or for a federal purpose. And that gets us to Section 5, which is on page 92, line 30. This is an appropriation section that we went through on the spreadsheets. So I will now turn it over to Ms. Jelseth, who will take us through Article 7.
Thank you, Ms. Hover. Article 7 starts on page 94, line 1. This is nutrition and libraries. Section 1 comprises of Senate File 777. This is a Senator Housley bill. It requires participants in the National School Lunch Program to adopt and post a school meals policy. requires a respectful treatment of providing meals to students. And then sections 2 through 4 are Senate File 1131, a Johnson bill, Senator Johnson. It modifies the public library systems aid distribution and appropriates money for regional library basic system support. And next, Ms. Lewis will go over Article 8.
Article 8 starts on page 100, line 5. It's early childhood. It has one section. It's from Senate File 237 from Senator Swedzinski, and it's a limit on screen time for children in preschool and public preschool and kindergarten programs. A new sentence was added at the end of that section that the section doesn't apply to a child for whom they have a IFSP or an IEP. And then section 2 is appropriations. And then I think it's Ms. Joseph who has the next article.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Lewis. Article 9 on page 102, line 24 is community education and lifelong learning. This comprises of Senate File 783, a Senator Chamberlain bill. It modifies the responsibilities of the Community Education Advisory Council, modifies the calculation and allowable uses of the general community education revenue, adds a new community education aid funding formula, clarifies the calculation of adult basic education aid growth rate, and then appropriates money for community education aid and other community education programs. And then Article 10 on page 106, line 23, is state agencies. So section 1 comprises of Senate File 2. This is a Senator Nelson bill. It modifies the governor's peacetime emergency authority, which eliminates the authority of the governor to use peacetime emergency authority to impose restrictions on schools. Senate File 829, it starts on section 2. That is the Senator Chamberlain bill, which is related to Purpose Center for Arts Education. So it abolishes the Purpose Center for Arts Education on June 30th, 2022, requires the center to submit a proposal to convey for no less than fair market value the real and personal property of the Purpose Arts High School to a school district or nonprofit institution. It creates a position with the Department of Education for an arts education specialist, makes conforming changes to reflect that the Purpose Center for Arts Education is abolished in other sections of the bill. And then it appropriates money to the Department of Ed, Minnesota State Academies, Purpose Center for Arts Education, Pels V, and repeals Minnesota statutes and rules regarding the Purpose Center, repeals a subdivision that included an errant cross reference to a Purpose Center statute. And then finally, section 15 on page 124, line 5, directs the commissioner to request waivers from the federal maintenance of effort requirements under the Consolidated Appropriations Act and the American Rescue Plan Act. And that was a Senator Rosen bill.
Thank you, Ms. Joseph. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Next, I think we're supposed to go over and then Article 11 is just the forecast article. And that brings us to the end. And I think next, you just want me to go over the 2 runs pretty quick?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Joseph.
Okay.
Go over those separate runs quicker. What's that?
Thank you.
Yeah, can you share your screen? That's Ms. Joseph.
Yes, thank you, Chair Chamberlain. I'll share that here. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, members, I was told that those 2 documents were sent out just this morning, so you haven't seen them yet. You haven't.
Can you see my screen okay?
Gotcha, yep.
Awesome, okay, thank you. So this is, I think this was just sent out pretty recently, like Senator Chamberlain said. This is a run for fiscal year 22 of all the bills that we could show the district changes. So first, if you look, I will refer to the column headers A, B, C, and along there. So column A shows the district number. Column B is the district name. Column C is the average daily membership of each district, which is the count of resident students attending public school. Column D is federal ESSER, which stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Formula-Based Allocations. Title 1, 2, and 3, or sorry, Title 1, and it's ESSER 1, 2, and 3 added up, divided by the fiscal year 20 ADM. So the state average was 2,145, but it shows, for example, Aiken, per fiscal year 20 ADM, Aiken is receiving about 2,686 ESSER 1, 2, and 3 Title 1 dollars per ADM. So if you go through, you can see how the federal money, and this federal money was again, the state had no choice in how it was allocated, 90% based off Title 1. So we included that because the next column, column E, is Minnesota Classroom Support Aid. And that is an appropriation, a one-time appropriation in fiscal year 22 of $60 million. So 400,000 each is distributed to the 4 intermediate school districts, 208 school district 287, 288, 916, 917, and then the Minnesota State Academies. And then the rest of the allocation, the remaining 58 million, is distributed based on 2020 average daily membership counts for school districts and charter schools. So if a school district or charter school received more than 5,000 per pupil of ESSER 1, 2, and 3, which was shown in column D, the maximum appropriation they will receive is 1 million. So then column E shows the breakout of that Minnesota Classroom Support Aid, and column F shows per fiscal year 20 ADM. So the state total on average is about $70 per ADM under that bill. Moving on to column G, this is transportation sparsity. This was a Senator Housley bill. It's additional aid starting in fiscal year 22 and later. So it's about 7.6 million in fiscal year 22, column H. And then this is about on average $9 per average daily membership or ADM. And then safe schools, columns J, K, and L, it shows the current levy in column J, which is about 36.4 million. And this was a Senator Chamberlain bill. And the total aid adds about $10.5 million. And for safe schools, this was the bill that in fiscal year 22 is all aid. And then starting in fiscal year 23, it's aid plus an equalized levy, which I'll show in the next run. So this is about $12 more per ADM on average. And then the total columns N and O is total of Minnesota Classroom Support Aid, transportation sparsity, and then safe schools. And then O is per ADM. So, oh, I guess, sorry, I forgot my screen was up. I should have showed that. And then I can pull up fiscal year 23. Did it change to fiscal year 23 or is it still in fiscal year 22?
It changed. You're good.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, that's good. Thank you, Ms. Hilbert. Sometimes I share the
Okay,
screen.
good. Gotcha. Good.
Okay. All right. So next we're going to look at fiscal year 23. So again, everything's the same with the column A and B and C and D. And then referendum equalization. This is new starting in fiscal year 23. Columns E, F, G, H, and I refer to the referendum equalization. The current referendum levy is about $813 million. So under this Senator Chamberlain bill, the change in referendum levy is about negative 24.8 million. So this saves about $28 per average daily membership. And then instead, because we're equalizing it, the aid will take over for that levy that's being lost, which will be column H, $26.3 million. And it's a little bit more than the levy, the aid is, because charter schools have no levy authority. So the change in referendum aid again is $26.3 million, which is about $30 per average daily membership. So that program is ongoing then. And then transportation sparsity, again, Senator Housley's bill is about 8.6 million for fiscal year 23. And that's about 8.6 million, or sorry, $10 per average daily membership. And then safe schools, this was also last year in fiscal year 22, which I showed. This is where we're now having an equalized levy in addition to the aid. So the total aid change is about 6.5 million, and then the total levy change equalized is 6.5 million. So total revenue change for safe schools is now about 13 million, which is about $7 per average daily membership. And then community education is a new Chamberlain bill that will start in fiscal year 23, and it adds about $3.90 per average daily membership per student, which is about 3.1 $1 million starting in fiscal year 23. And then that amount increases to $16.30 per average daily membership in fiscal year 24. So, and onward. So if you go to the total columns R and S, the total aid change, which includes referendum, equalization, transportation sparsity, and safe schools, and then community ed, that's about $44.6 million for fiscal year 23, which is about $51 per average daily membership. And then I'm happy to take questions or Senator Chamberlain.
Thank you very much. Amazing work by all of you, from Ed and Greg and Judy as well. So with that, we're going to go right to testimony. So again, members and testifiers, 2 minutes. And I'm going to go by the list I have here. And it looks like we're starting off with Commissioner Mueller. Dr. Mueller, welcome to committee. May begin your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Chamberlain and committee members. I'm Heather Mueller, Commissioner of Education. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on your education budget and policy omnibus bill. As I've said before, I believe that we all have the shared goal of improving the lives of our children and centering our students in our policy and budget recommendations, and we do this work to create more opportunities for their success. First, I'd like to focus on some of the areas of the bill where I believe our efforts complement each other. We know that students need to see themselves reflected in the adults in their schools. As a result, the bill's investments in programs like Grow Your Own help to expand and diversify the education profession. I do, however, believe we must adopt the complementary policy enhancements to the program. I also appreciate the efforts and investments taken in the bill to create more access around rigorous coursework and post-secondary opportunities, and I'm committed to continue working with you on these. We also know that when our children have their basic needs met, they learn better, and that's why I'm glad to see the bill includes language around lunch shaming. Thank you for also including a whole harmless for ABE funding going into the future. This is going to create a long-awaited security for this program. And given the need to diversify our instructional model to include distance learning, we would like to continue to work with you and education advocates to make distance learning an option for at least the next school year. And with the limited target you received, investments around room aid, referendum equalization, transportation sparsity, safe schools, regional libraries, and community education are laudable. These are target areas that we know have been stretched thin by the COVID-19 pandemic. It is unfortunate that you did not have a larger target to meet the demands of our education system to help recover from the pandemic and meet the sorely lacking investments in equity needed to close opportunity and achievement gaps. I will focus on some of the areas where this bill misses the mark on funding and policy. A larger target would have allowed significant investment toward funding the general education formula, reducing the special education cross subsidy, investing in English learners, and larger geographic equity through equalization. The bill fails fund 4,000 voluntary pre-kindergarten slots, which provides access to our historically underserved learners. This also misses the mark and a huge opportunity to invest in student support personnel because we know that our student to counselor ratio is one of the worst in the nation. Additionally, we know that our students, families, and communities need well-rounded supports to thrive. That's why I'm disappointed to see no investments in full-service community schools and wraparound services. I also challenge the Senate to provide resources on multi-tiered systems of support and policies around social emotional learning, culturally inclusive teaching and learning environments, restorative practices, and reducing restrictive procedures. While I applaud the movement toward banning suspensions in kindergarten through grade 3, I believe that we can still work to strengthen that language. Conversely, it is unfortunate that the bill includes a zero tolerance discipline language that does not address the root causes of behavior and has the potential of having a significantly negative impact on our BIPOC students and students who receive special education services. A better approach would be to adopt our comprehensive proposal around non-exclusionary discipline policies and the ongoing funding for educator training to effectively implement those policies. I'm also concerned that this bill does not include ethnic studies or Indigenous education for all and lets down all of our students, especially our BIPOC students. We must include all of our students, especially our BIPOC students. We must include ethnic studies in our Minnesota standards and provide staff to support their implementation. Equally, it must include Indigenous education for all to fully capture the contributions of our American Indian citizens in Minnesota. It's vitally important that what our students learn and what our educators teach reflects the students at our classrooms, the people of Minnesota, and the historical and current contributions that they have made in every content area. As we've testified before, we believe that districts deserve some relief from standards implementation next year. However, a wholesale stop in the standards revision process will result in undoing the work of our Social Studies Standards Committee, which is the most diverse in Minnesota's history. The bill also misses a range of opportunities to make impactful investments and policy changes for our American Indian students, like tribal early learning grants, tribal Head Start set aside, expanding access to the Minnesota Indian Teacher Training Program, and tribal relations training for school leaders. Finally, there are proposals in this bill that I must actively oppose. The bill unnecessarily removes the governor's authority to use the statutory peacetime emergency to alter school calendars and activities. This authority was vital to the efforts in keeping our students, families, and educators safe during this pandemic. I also cannot support the funding that this bill diverts from public education toward private school vouchers. Our constitutional responsibility is to our public education system, which serves all students, those of all races, ethnicities, religions, economic statuses, gender identities, sexual orientations, abilities, and zip codes. I find it harmful and completely unnecessary to include a provision that seeks to prohibit our transgender students' participation in sports based on their identity. Lastly, it's disappointing that the bill takes a cynical approach to what our state can do for our students, families, and communities by eliminating the Purpose Center for Arts, Education, and cutting MDE's budget. Instead, we could invest in expanded language access for families, modernizing our data system to increase accountability for students and families, and supporting anti-bias professional development. I look forward to working together on a package that will best serve our students and families, educators, and communities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Commissioner. Next up, Ms. Dufferin. Superintendent Dufferin.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair Chamberlain and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning. My name is Barb Dufferin, and I am the superintendent of Mahtomedi Public Schools. Today, I represent my district as well as MASA, MSBA, AMSD, and C. I'm here to speak to two related provisions of the bill that support educational innovation: an expanded definition of hours of instruction, and the innovation zone. During the 18-19 school year, Mahtomedi adopted our strategic plan, which calls us to pursue personalized learning environments as we define teaching and learning without barriers. Minnesota's current definition of hours of instruction puts time as the focus rather than student engagement and student learning. A sole focus on time can be a barrier to considering new and innovative teaching and learning models that work for each student. We know, for example, students learn at different rates and require different levels of support. When we define instructional hours solely in terms of classroom seat time, we limit the opportunities to create quality, personalized experiences in areas such as internships, blended learning, and service learning that may or may not happen within the scheduled school day. Prior to joining Mahtomedi, I was the Director of Educational Services in Farmington, an Innovation Zone pilot district. Our goal was to free our teachers to research and design educational models in order to meet the needs of each learner, using the strategic plan as our guide. The Innovation Zone designation cultivated a culture of innovation, possibility, and progress that remains in Farmington today, and I encourage you to allow this opportunity to all school districts. Even with Innovation Zone designation, the definition of hours of instruction was a significant barrier to redesign. So I was happy for the flexibility provided in the Safe Learning Plan around defining hours of instruction. It was this flexibility that allowed Mahtomedi to design a hybrid model that maximized in-person instruction for all K-5 students. Even during hybrid learning in the pandemic, we provided 4 days of in-person instruction, K-5. I encourage you to allow districts the continued flexibility to design equitable learning experiences that are driven by student strengths, interests, and needs, and supported by learning sciences by expanding the definition of hours of instruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next up is Mr. Sims, then on deck is Ms. Abdul. So Mr. Sims, you're next, then Ms. Abdul, and then Ms. Luger after Ms. Abdul. So Mr. Sims, welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and you can continue.
Marvin Sims. Thank you, Senator Chamberlain and community members for having me today. I want to talk about education innovation. I run a mentoring program called Stripes University. Students together respecting the importance and purpose of education in schools. There's 3 things that we do well like no other. The first is we tap into our students' why. So what's the why? It's the motivation. And we say the why, your why must make you cry. If it doesn't make you cry, it's not strong enough.
Mrs. Sims, we lost your audio there. Anybody hear me? Thumbs up if you hear me. Okay. Mr. Sims, we lost you.
Hello?
Yep, got you back. There you are.
All right. Do you simply want to have your mother in the stands with tears in her eyes seeing her child graduate? The second piece is that we connect our students' dreams with a career. What do you want to do? How do we get you there? Let's map out a plan. The third component of the program is that we teach our kids how to compete in the classroom. So our kids use the same skill set that they use in sports, but they bring it into the classroom. So now you have a student's why, which is
And we lost you again there, Mr. Sims. And we lost your audio again, Mr. Sims. I don't know what happened, but yeah, I remember we had talked about your presentation, and I think you have a good program going there, and just where we're at right now. But something wrong with your audio. We'll have to just move on. So thank you, Mr. Sims.
thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Ms. Abdul, you're up now. Then on deck is Ms. Luger. And then after that is Mr. Aaron Balzer. So Ms. Abdul, welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and who you're with.
She doesn't pop on, then go ahead to the next one.
Okay, I don't see Ms. Abdul. So Ms. Luger, you're up.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Claire Luger, and I'm a special education teacher in the White Bear Lake Area School District. I work with some of the most at-risk students in our school who struggle to engage and learn. School is difficult for them due to their disabilities, socioeconomic status, and their support outside of school. The education savings accounts, or really the voucher program that's contained in this bill, harms students and siphon money away and resources away from public schools to the tune of $300 million based on this committee's spreadsheets. Let's say the average educator is paid $50,000. Then on one page, this bill attempts to recruit and retain diverse educators. But on the next, funding for the voucher program could cut 6,000 educators from our public schools. My children attend the same school district that I attended. They have amazing educators, and in spite of their best efforts, their resources have steadily declined over the last 20 years as state funding has eroded. Some districts are wealthy enough to cover the difference, but in my home district, we don't have the wealth or the industry to cover that without asking taxpayers for more, and that's excruciating. We passed a levy a few years ago, and it was the first one that was passed in almost 15 years. Meanwhile, it's the kids who lost the opportunities that their district can't pay for and that the state fails to provide. As a locally elected official, I know how crucial it is to use taxpayer money efficiently and responsibly. Vouchers aren't fiscally responsible, and they aren't an effective use of taxpayer dollars. They take away crucial funding for schools and are inequitable. They're inequitable for our students in special education, inequitable for our students from religious minorities, and inequitable for our LGBTQ students. I urge the committee to oppose this language. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Luger. So Mr. Balzer, you're up, and then Matt Shaver, you're on deck, and Wendy Webster after that. Mr. Balzer, Matt Shaver, and Ms. Webster. So Mr. Balzer, please welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record, and you may proceed.
Members of the Senate, my name is Aaron Balzer, school psychologist with Anoka Hennepin Schools, where I've worked for the last 20 years. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I worked hard with administration on school safety, improving paraeducator retention, and mental health supports. It's clear to me that we have just enough to prevent the big behaviors, but not enough to ever get at enabling big learning for disadvantaged students. Today, underfunding is at a crisis level. State education spending is now about 12% less in real dollars than in 2003. We can talk about any improvement we like within education, but in the end, we do not have the resources to do what is needed or sometimes even what's required. This bill does not provide those resources, and in fact, I'm agreeing with earlier testimony that it cuts public schools by about $300 million. Supporters say vouchers or education spending, education savings accounts, as they're called, give the option for parents to take their kids out of failing schools. The truth is, schools are not failing. The state is failing to fund our schools and expecting local taxpayers to make up for a regressive tax structure. In the 1990s, Minnesota education routinely ranked with the highest states in the country. We also ranked in the top for funding. Today, we are 23rd in educational funding, and guess where we're at with test performance? You guessed it, about 23rd. Money is required for good results. Vouchers do not raise revenue. So what do we need to fund? Hybrid learning has taught us that kids need timely support from their teacher. Smaller class sizes support both emotional well-being and learning. Second, fund adequate support staff. The pandemic has exacerbated the pre-existing mental health crisis we all face. There is an inadequate pipeline for training mental health staff and inadequate funding to keep mental health professionals, such as the school-based mental health therapists in our buildings. Please fund our schools to help keep our state the national leader in education we've always known it to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balzer. Next up is Mr. Shaver and Wendy Webster. And after that, Ms. Cragthorpe. I'm sorry. So Shaver, Webster, Cragthorpe. Mr. Shaver, welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and who you're with.
Chair Chamberlain and members of the committee, good morning. My name is Matt Shaver and I'm the policy director at Ed Allies. As a former teacher, I'm going to share some of our glows and grows for this omnibus bill. First, we commend Chair Chamberlain for standing up to the special interests that sought to roll back commitments on teacher licensure. These changes would have taken away 10 of 12 pathways to a Tier 2 license and restricted the autonomy of districts to decide which educators are best for their students. We know that the pandemic has had asymmetrical impacts on different student populations, which makes the COVID-19 recovery services for students with disabilities on lines 79.17 through 80.32 so critical. We're glad to see improvements to the authorizer corrective action process included on lines 33.2 through 34.3 that would add a layer of accountability and further the goal of quality charter options for students and families. It's crucial for our youngest students to be able to have the opportunity to learn from behavior mistakes in school. So we're pleased to see the provisions to improve school discipline practices on lines 21.9 through 21.11 and hope to see further progress come out of final negotiations on this complex topic. We believe every child deserves to feel engaged, supported, and included in school, from the classroom to extracurriculars, and therefore do not support lines 21.1 through 21.5. This committee is taking decisive action to once and for all eliminate lunch shaming in lines 94.4 through 97.14, which demonstrates a simple and common sense approach to policymaking. First and foremost, do right by kids. Another student-centered changes on lines 17.25 through 18.9 that would add an on-track for graduation indicator for 9th grade students in the World's Best Workforce Report. We encourage the committee to adopt language consistent with the bipartisan Senate File 1537 that includes reporting on participation in rigorous coursework. Finally, allocating $6 million for letters training on lines 74.16 through 74.20 is a visionary decision that will materially improve the instruction of more than 2,000 Minnesota educators, and most importantly, lead to better literacy outcomes for students, as following the science of reading can finally become the norm in Minnesota schools. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and thank you all for your public service to our state.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. So Wendy Webster and Ms. Cragthorpe, and then Maren Christensen. So Ms. Webster, welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record.
Good morning, Chair Chamberlain and members of the Senate Education, Finance, and Policy Committee. My name is Wendy Webster, and I serve as the Director of Community Services and Communications for the St. Anthony Brighton School District. On behalf of the Minnesota Community Education Association, thank you for your additional investments in community education. This bill modifies language, yet provides significant increases in funding to the general community ed revenue. In Minnesota, 75% of school districts have a census population of 10,000 or less. Our small school district has a census population of 9,846, and I want to share the fiscal impact of this change to small school districts across the state. Although our district is located in the 7-county metro area, our school district faces similar challenges to small school districts across the state. Each year, our general community levy generates just over $53,000 in revenue, which has remained flat since 2005. In the proposed bill, in 2023, the levy would increase our funding by just over $5,000. This would restore our funding to the level it was in 2002. In addition, the proposed community education aid would increase our district's community education funding by approximately $7,000 in 2023 and $29,000 in 2024. Again, I share this example to highlight how the increases would impact our district and emphasize that 75% of school districts in the state are our size or smaller. Increasing our general community education levy and proposed state aid would give school districts across Minnesota greater ability to engage our communities and provide high quality, affordable programming for all of our residents. Finally, I do want to mention that this bill does not include continued funding for the 4,000 slots for voluntary pre-K. And I encourage members of this committee in negotiations with the House to continue funding for voluntary pre-K. This funding is critical to ensure our school-based early learning programs, where a high percentage of students qualify for educational benefits, can continue partnering with parents and children to ensure our children are prepared for success in kindergarten and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Webster. So next up is Ms. Craig Thorpe, then Ms. Christensen, and then Mr. Spies. So welcome to the committee, Ms. Craig Thorpe. Please state your name, who you're with for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Chamberlain and members of the committee. My name is Holly Cragthorpe, and I'm the Deputy Director at Educators for Excellence Minnesota. And we're a teacher-led nonprofit that serves around 2,300 members in Minnesota. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify in Senate File 960. And as with any bill of this size, there are a number of provisions that we like and some that we would urge you to reconsider in the next months during negotiations. This year, our teacher members are prioritizing 3 areas. First, additional school resources for those that need them the most, especially in the wake of COVID. Efforts to recruit and retain more teachers of color, as well as restorative discipline practices that increase learning time. And there are some great provisions in this bill that E4E supports. In particular, investments to increase BIPOC teachers and to protect the tiered licensure system, resources to address learning disparities in the wake of COVID-19, and the expansion of school performance measures to ensure broad participation in honors programming and to report how many students are on track for graduation. Additionally, we agree with you that suspensions for our earliest learners in Article 2, Section 12 should be far rarer, and we ask you to reconsider the language with regard to punitive discipline measures that have not been shown to improve student behavior. So we do ask for the removal of Article 3, Section 2, which would unfairly and disproportionately impact students of color and students with disabilities. Furthermore, we recommend that the committee strike language discriminating against students who identify as transgender and include Senator Eichhorn's Senate File 1356, an important bill which would reform compensatory revenue for schools with high poverty concentrations. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify. We're happy to connect you with experienced teachers who can speak on any of these points, and we look forward to moving ahead with you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Craig Thorpe. So Ms. Christensen, then Mr. Spies, and then Mr. Charles Rick. So Ms. Christensen, welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record.
Thank you, Chairman Chamberlain and committee members. My name is Maren Christensen Hofer, and I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the Multicultural Autism Action Network. And I'm here to say a heartfelt thank you on behalf of thousands of families across Minnesota who are families of children with disabilities. And our thanks is for including the special education recovery provisions and the education omnibus bill. We've heard a lot about how families have been incredibly challenged by the pandemic, and children with disabilities have been hit particularly hard. The recovery education provisions will be a tremendous help for children with disabilities to make up for what they've missed. And including it in the bill sends the message that you've heard us. So I'm here to say thank you for that. We're really looking forward to this bill progresses and to see this important step passed into law. I'm also a member of the Solutions Not Suspensions Coalition, and we'd like to note our thanks for inclusion on the limits of the use of suspensions for Minnesota's youngest learners in kindergarten through 3rd grade. We've still got some work to do there, but we know that our young students need support when they're struggling, and not exclusion, not isolation. That work begins when we see students in crisis not as a situation to be controlled, but as an opportunity for skills to be developed. Thank you for seeing the importance of better alternatives for students like ours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Christensen. So Mr. Spies, then Mr. Rick, and then Ramona Kiddo. So Mr. Spies, welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record.
Good morning, Chair Chamberlain and members. My name is Paul Spies with the Coalition to Increase Teachers of Color and American Indian Teachers in Minnesota. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for considering the proposals in the Increased Teacher of Color Act, Senate File 446, led by Senator Abler, with 4 co-authors from this committee. We appreciate you including investments with our recommended policy languages for the Come Teach in Minnesota hiring bonus program and the teacher recruitment marketing campaign. Thank you also for proposing increased investments to important grant programs that have been underfunded, namely Prepare Paraprofessional Pathway to Teacher Licensure, or more commonly known Grow Your Own Program grants, and the Teacher Mentorship and Retention grants. We appreciate that your investments in these 4 programs, as well as the Black Men Teach grant, is more than the Senate has done previously to invest in diversifying the teacher workforce. However, please understand that these important investments, unfortunately, will not be enough to increase the percentage of teachers of color and American Indian teachers in our schools. More comprehensive and more larger investments are needed for such systemic change. In my supplemental written testimony, I explained several concerns and provide some suggestions for addressing those concerns. These concerns relate to policies you did include and the policies that were not adopted from Senate File 446 that are need to maximize your return on investments for the Grow Your Own program and the Teacher Mentorship and Retention Grant program. We're also very concerned about the amended language to the Collaborative Urban and Greater Minnesota Educator of Color Grant program that we did not propose and does not address the Office of Legislative Auditor's report recommendations for the legislature. You'll see I've included proposed amending language to this comic statute in my written testimony that's gained widespread agreement among stakeholders in the past several weeks. Please see opportunity to do more in your conference committee negotiations that's needed for a diverse teaching force that serves all students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spies. I am sorry about the name. I thought I had it right. Someone told me the other day. So, Mr. Spies, thank you. Next up is Mr. Rick, and then Kiddo and Ms. Quaid. So, Mr. Rick, welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record.
Charles Rick, Executive Director at the Purpose Center for Arts Education. Mr. Chair and members, in 1985, the legislature created a state agency called Purpose Center for Arts Education to operate a residential arts high school and support art education opportunities for K-12 students and teachers throughout the state. Now, this bill would dismantle Purpose and transfer its assets, including sale of property. It would replace Purpose Center services with 1 FTE at MDE and an unspecified grant to the private nonprofit McPhail Center for Music from Senate File 1829. A similar bill was introduced in 2017 on the heels of an audit of Purpose by the Office of the Legislative Auditor, which included the now closed Crosswinds East Metro Arts and Science School. The 2017 audit findings were quickly corrected, and we've been very effective and efficient in the past 4 years, exceeding expectations in our professional development outreach and increasing student interest in enrolling in the Arts High School. In fiscal year 20, we provided professional development services in music, theater, dance, and visual and media arts for approximately 2,050 arts educators and 304 school districts. The Arts High School experienced a double-digit increase in enrollment this year, and we expect another double-digit increase in enrollment for 21-22. This interest is from across the state and every congressional district. There are flaws in this bill. 1 FTE at MDE and a partnership with a private nonprofit organization will not offer the same level of service that Purpose currently provides. Minnesota loses an opportunity to offer students a free public educational opportunity for students who desire to develop, enhance, and integrate their artistic and academic abilities to their highest potential. In conclusion, a lesson learned from COVID has been that learning happens best in school, whether it's the arts, biology, English, or sports. In making your decision, please consider Purpose Center for Arts Education as an investment and as a shining star in Minnesota and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rick. Next up is Ramona Kiddo, then Ms. Quaid, and then Mr. Babcock. So Miss Kiddo, oh no, I'm sorry, it's Stately. Welcome to committee. Please state your name for the record and who you're with. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I am Ramona Quito Stately. I am the director of We Are Still Here Minnesota, a project of the Native Governance Center located in St. Paul. We Are Still Here Minnesota is an effort to change the narrative about Native Americans to accurately reflect their history, existence, and ongoing contributions to the state, and to create greater mutual understanding between Native and non-Native Minnesotans. My colleagues and I submitted a letter last week asking that you include Governor Walz's proposal for Indigenous education for all and tribal relations training for school leaders. To save your time now, I will simply refer that letter for your consideration and respectfully ask that as this bill moves through the legislative process, you give future serious consideration to those proposals and other Native-related initiatives. On behalf of the many of us who have a long and deep experience in Indian education and know its benefits to non-Native students, we stand ready to provide our insights and assistance to your committee. Thank you for the opportunity to briefly address you.
Thank you, Ms. Stately. I'm sorry, Stately, that's right. Thank you very much. Next up, Ms. Quaid, then Mr. Babcock, and Ms. Chang. Ms. Quaid, welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Erin May Quaid, and I'm the Advocacy Director at Gender Justice, a legal and policy advocacy nonprofit that seeks to advance gender equity through the law. I'm testifying today and urging you to remove lines 21.1 to 21.5 from Senate File 960 that's in the A1 amendment. If passed, these 4 lines would force coaches, teachers, staff, and schools to act in a manner that is unconstitutional per the United States and Minnesota constitutions, illegal and in violation of the Minnesota Human Rights Act, in violation of Title IX, which would cost schools any Title IX funding they receive, cost districts across the state untold millions of dollars in litigation costs, and harm students. I'll start by saying that transgender girls are girls, and I reject any language that attempts to paint transgender girls as boys, but it's clear that the chief author of this bill language sees it as an attempt to ban transgender girls from playing sports. So transgender students participate in sport for the same reason as their cisgender teammates, for the physical and mental health well-beings that they get, the invaluable lessons of teamwork and discipline. But the Minnesota State High School League has had a policy allowing transgender students to compete in sports that align with their gender identity for years, and this has been happening without issue. In fact, since the Minnesota State High School League adopted a formal policy permitting students to play on teams based with their gender identity, girls' participation rates in sports has increased, not decreased. And this is not unique to Minnesota. It's happening in California and Connecticut. Further, I mentioned it was a violation of both the United States and Minnesota constitutions to prohibit transgender girls from playing on sports that align with their gender identity. As the Minnesota Court of Appeals recently ruled in NHB and Okehennepin School District, as far as the Minnesota Constitution is concerned, transgender students are similarly situated to their cisgender peers. In other words, schools must treat transgender boys like they treat all other boys, and they must treat transgender girls like all other girls. And I'm sure you've seen in the news, Okehennepin's failure to do just that cost them $300,000. In a neighbor state of Wisconsin, the school district that didn't treat a transgender boy like all other boys had to pay him $800,000. And Idaho passed a similar bill in 2020, and a federal judge immediately paused that bill, noting that it likely violated the United States Constitution. So these numbers, $300,000 and $800,000 in Wisconsin, do not include the school district's own legal fees and all the costs associated with litigation. So this bill would cost districts and ultimately Minnesota taxpayers a lot of money to solve a problem that does not exist. And while lines 21.4 to 21.5 say nothing in this section may be construed to invalidate a court order, that language is meaningless and does not save this bill from directing schools to violate the law or
Ms. Quaid, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, please.
Yep, absolutely. I'll just say this. There are really real threats to girls and women's sports: racism, pay inequities, sexual abuse, and lack of athletic opportunities, to name a few. But transgender girls competing in sports is not one. And so there are a lot of things that this committee could do to support girls and women's sports, and I urge you to prioritize that. Girls and women's sports are stronger when we prioritize equity and inclusion, and I ask you to remove this language from the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quaid. Next is Mr. Babcock, then Ms. Chang, then Ms. Hinton. And Ms. Abdul, I understand you're here now, so you're up last. Ms. Abdul will be last testifier. So Mr. Babcock, you're up. Welcome to committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record.
My name is Paul Babcock, and I'm President and Chief Operating Officer at McPhail Center for Music. Thank you, Chair Chamberlain and committee members for letting me testify this afternoon or this morning. I want to speak in regards to Senate File 321 for online access to music education, and would like to express our thanks and gratitude for the recognition of this program by the Senate Education and Policy Committee. This program is in response to needs of music educators throughout the state for access to specialized music education in an online format. And the last 2 years of funding have proven to be a really excellent showcase for online music programming throughout the state. We were going very far in advance of the pandemic, and then as the pandemic hit, our work and collaboration with schools throughout the state even increased considerably. The bill is expanded to include all Title I schools in addition to schools throughout greater Minnesota. This is a program that's reviewed by a third-party research organization, Wilder Research, and has proven excellent results both in the accomplishments of music students as well as their academic gains through the school year. So we thank you, Chair Chamberlain, along with the committee members, and we look forward to continuing this program and expanding to Title I schools in addition to the schools throughout greater Minnesota. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Babcock. Next up, Ms. Chang, and then Ms. Hinton, and then Ms. Abdul. So Ms. Chang, welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record.
Hello. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you so much for having me today to testify on your Education Omnibus Bill. My name is Michelle Chang. I am the lead organizer for education at the Coalition of Asian American Leaders, otherwise known as CAL. We are a social justice organization with a network of 4,000 Asian Minnesotan leaders across the state of Minnesota. CAL is also part of the Minnesota Ethnic Studies Coalition, composed of over 30 organizations, including Education Liberation, Unidos, and Education Minnesota. We really appreciate that the Senate Education Omnibus Bill includes some provisions related to education equity, but we were disappointed to see that it does not include ethnic studies. So on behalf of the Ethnic Studies Coalition, I'm here today to ask that you include ethnic studies as a graduation requirement in this bill going forward, using the Ethnic Studies bill authored by Senator Kunesh as a model to do so. Curricula shapes how we think, understand, and act in this world, and making ethnic studies a graduation requirement is critical to ensuring our children are prepared for success. It enables students to better understand the rich heritage, culture, and history of the land upon which we live, told from multiple and diverse perspectives. And additionally, ethnic studies intentionally centers those who have been historically and systematically erased from mainstream curricula due to colonialism, racism, patriarchy, xenophobia, and linguistic imperialism. And when schools recognize and include the assets that students bring, students become more engaged in coursework, which will lead to increased reading and math scores for our state. Again, I strongly urge the committee to include ethnic studies in this bill so all students in Minnesota have the benefit of an ethnic studies education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chang. Okay, two left, Ms. Hinton and then Ms. Abdul. Ms. Hinton, welcome to the committee. Please state your name, who you're with for the record, and go.
Good morning, Chair Chamberlain and members of the committee. I am Deb Hinton, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. I appreciate the opportunity to provide this testimony that is also supported by AMSD, MSBA, and C. While we have some concerns with some portions of SF 960 that we will address at a later time, we are supportive of the provisions that allow a distance learning option for school districts, the flexible learning year program, increasing levy equalization aid, and the short call substitute teacher pilot. It is essential for school districts to have the option to offer a distance learning program moving forward. Without this change to statute, families opting for distance learning would need to find an online learning provider, and the majority of school districts are not online learning providers. Converting every school district to also being an online learning provider is costly and unnecessary. This bill will enable students and families choosing distance learning to stay with their school district, with the teachers, school leaders, and communities they know and support. Allowing the school board to approve a distance learning program demonstrates professional courtesy and affords local control, which is a near constant request from those we both serve. School districts have a year of experience with distance learning, and a number of them have consulted with teachers and drafted distance learning schedules for next year to meet the anticipated demand. Earlier this year, we heard testimony from the Rochester superintendent who shared the success of one of its elementary schools that has operated on a 45, 15-day schedule for years. The flexible learning year program allows this type of schedule and the creative development of other types of schedules to meet the request of families and the resources available to the school district. Again, this bill provides for professional courtesy and local approval of such programs, and we are grateful. Lastly, it has become clear that our school districts across the state struggle daily to find substitute teachers. We believe the short call substitute teacher pilot will assist with the substitute shortage. It is an important first step and will provide important findings for future consideration. Thank you, Chair Chamberlain and members of the committee for your support of these provisions and your service to our state.
Thank you, Ms. Hinton. And Ms. Abdul, so you're going to wrap this up, Ms. Abdul. Have a care.
Hi.
So, Ms. Abdul, please welcome the committee. Please state your name.
All right.
Proceed. Go ahead,
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Last but definitely not the least, I hope. Dear Mr. Chair and members, many thanks for the opportunity to testify. My name is Aidel Abdul. For my son and other students like him, many of you are parents, uncles, aunts, etc. We all send our children to school to learn not just math and science, but also social and life skills. Research has repeatedly told us that students of color and students with disabilities are disproportionately suspended. Many, including my son, who has nonverbal autism, do not understand suspension, yet schools kick these kids out of their educational environment. We all want safe schools, but we also want our children to learn and stay in school. Administrators and teachers need support, training, and resources to teach, but they should also be held accountable for their actions. I ask you to add the suspension bill from Senator Patricia Torres-Ray and the governor's language of trying non-exclusionary methods first before suspending a kid to the Senate portion of the Education Omnibus bill. You have all heard the horrible and shameful record Minnesota has in education disparity. You also know that Minnesota is the only state in the country with a divided legislature. What the voters have told you is to work together in a bipartisan manner that ensures everyone's voice is heard and valued. I ask you all to please keep our children in schools, increase teachers of color, and protect students with disabilities from being punished for their disability. As always, I thank you for your time and hope this legislative session produces more fruitful laws than before for all students. I might add, I timed myself and I'm less than 2 minutes.
That was a beautiful wrap up, Ms. Abdul. Beautiful wrap up.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the testimony. All right, members, tomorrow we vote. We have some discussion tomorrow and we'll vote on the bill. So that's what we're looking forward to. I thank everybody for their testimony and their time and their patience. These are never easy or fun things to do, but essential part of the process. So members, thank you very much. We will go at it again tomorrow and 3 p.m. tomorrow, normal time tomorrow. So thank you, members. Thank you, testifiers. With that, the Education Committee stands adjourned.